6:36 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. Okay, my friends, notice Jeb Bush, pass after pass after pass after pass from the government media complex. Ted Cruz, however, here is the latest, my friends. Here is the latest. The Rhino class are now training their guns to try to knock off Ted Cruz. Over the weekend, in fact, at an event that both Brittany and Cooksey were at in Litchfield, New Hampshire, Senator Cruz was talking, obviously, about Second Amendment rights, how he did everything he can to try to roll back gun control legislation. And a question was asked, well, in the wake of all of these shootings, mass shootings at military installations, and in particular, the massacre at Fort Hood, where a jihadist yelling out Allahu Akbar turned his guns and shot dead 13 of our service members as they were getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan and Iraq. Those service members were unarmed. And the policy since Bush 41, because he was the one that helped implement it, since Daddy Bush, has been that our soldiers on base, in these military installations, are not allowed to carry weapons. They're not allowed to carry a gun or a firearm. And so the question asked of Ted Cruz was, in the wake of Fort Hood, in the wake of these other shootings, do you think, our soldiers who are there to protect our basic freedoms, including the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, shouldn't they be allowed to exercise the very same constitutional rights that they're trying to protect and defend for us? Meaning, can't they also bear arms? To protect themselves as self-defense against a future Nadal Hassan. Ted Cruz's answer was very simple. Okay, this was in Litchfield, up in New Hampshire. As he put it, I am very concerned about the policy. I think it's very important to have a public discussion about why we're denying our soldiers the ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights. Bingo, he's dead on. And then he said that he's been pressing John McCain to hold hearings, because McCain is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. He's been pressing McManiac to hold hearings on whether soldiers should be allowed to carry their own concealed firearms onto military bases. In other words, let's talk to the soldiers themselves. Let's talk to the military brass, the military leadership. Let's find out from the military itself. How do they feel about this policy? And would they like to see it changed? Would they like to be able to, be able to defend themselves from a future mass murderer or jihadist? Reporters then called up McManiac. And they asked McManiac, John McCain, apparently Ted Cruz recently said in Litchfield in New Hampshire that he's been pressing for hearings on your committee that you chair on having U.S. troops carry private firearms on military installations. And he was McManiac, being a maniac, couldn't help being petty, couldn't help being nasty, couldn't help being malicious, saw an opportunity to take a good swipe at Ted Cruz. Here is what McCain said. I was fascinated to hear that because I haven't heard a thing about it from him, nor has my staff heard from his staff. Where did that come from? I have not a clue. I'd be glad to discuss the issue and see if we need a hearing, but it came as a complete surprise to me that he had been pressing me. Okay, you could have just left it at that. I don't believe him. I'll be honest with you. I don't believe McManiac. I believe he has been pressed, but I'll get to that in a second. Fine. First I heard of it. I don't know. Maybe have his staff talk to my staff. He claims he's been pressing me. It's the first I hear about it. Let's talk it over. But no. No. The nasty McManiac. No. The nasty little rhino had to now stick the needle in, shoot his fellow Republican in the back. Maybe, quote, maybe it was through some medium that I'm not familiar with. Maybe bouncing it off the ozone layer, for all I know. There's a lot of holes in the ozone layer, so maybe it wasn't the ozone layer that he bounced it off of. Maybe it was through hand telegraph, maybe sign language. Who knows? Ha 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 ha. I'm so funny. Love me, media. Love me. I'm running now, I think, for the 6th time for re-election. I'm pushing 80. I've got one foot in the grave. But please keep re-electing me. I'm semi-senile. Let's bomb another country. Let's bomb Syria. What he was trying to do is obvious. Imply that Ted Cruz is a liar, that Ted Cruz made the whole thing up, and that basically Ted Cruz is a joke who can't be believed. With Republicans like this, who needs Democrats? Now, let me be candid with you. I know McCain. I know people on McCain's staff. I know what his staffers say about him in private. He often lies. That's what he does. Frankly, the elevator, how should I say this, does not go to the top. So maybe he can't remember that Ted Cruz asked him about it repeatedly. Maybe he can't remember that this has been a burning issue in the news for years now. Maybe he can't remember that people have been pushing and asking for hearings so that our soldiers can be able to defend themselves and carry concealed firearms on military installations, so a Fort Hood never happens again. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he needs more prune juice to get him revved up. I don't know what it takes for him to get his man. Maybe it's Alzheimer's setting in. I don't know. But I'll take Ted Cruz's word over his any day. And moreover, look how they love to shoot their own. You had your shot in 2008, McManiac. You had the Republican nomination. The whole Republican Party stood behind you. Conservatives stood behind you. Libertarians stood behind you. Social conservatives stood behind you. Everybody stood behind you. And what did you do? Did you mention Bill Ayers? Did you mention Jeremiah Wright? Did you mention his radical associations? Did you challenge him on his plan to overhaul and nationalize the healthcare system? You could have beaten him, and because of your cowardice, because of your refusal to go back and expose this man for the socialist radical charlatan that he is, you helped him get into power and now pave the way for the destruction of America. And the one guy that wants to undo the damage that Obama and establishment Republicans like you have done to this country, you now, maybe it's a hole in the ozone layer. I don't know what medium he's talking through. Maybe it's sign language. It's petty. Frankly, it's pathetic. He now wants to run for another term. John McManiac, I don't know how to tell you this. It's time to retire. Listen to Ted Cruz defend himself from attacks from the rhinos like John McCain. Fox News yesterday. Roll it, Brittany.
You and John McCain have had words over the time that you've been working as a senator. The most recent back and forth is that in New Hampshire, you said that you were pressing him to allow the military to carry concealed weapons on bases, and you felt that that would prevent things like what we saw happen at Fort Hood. Here's what John McCain says about it. He says, you're not pressing him on it. He says, it came as a complete surprise to me that he had been pressing me. Maybe it was some medium that I'm not familiar with. Maybe it was through hand telegraph, maybe sign language. He's making a joke out out of the whole thing. What say you?
Oh, I like John McCain. He's always voluble. He can always be counted on for a good quote. Listen, the question of concealed carry on military bases is an issue I've raised repeatedly. I've raised it at open hearings of the Senate Armed Services Committee, hearings where John McCain was, I believe, present at those hearings. And I also urged the prior chairman, Carl Levin, in writing, to hold hearings.
I mean, notice he just answers the questions, refutes the arguments, and I have to say this, okay, and then I want to open it up to the phone lines. It is McCain, the rhino, who called Ted Cruz, quote, a wacko bird. Remember, it was the rhinos under Reagan. Remember, it was Bush 41, the country club Republican, who referred to Reagan's economic policies, his supply side policies, as, quote, voodoo economics. People think that came from the left. It came from the rhino Bush 41. So I have to ask this of all the rhinos and McCain and Jeb Bush and all the other phony Republicans. What is such a wacko bird about Ted Cruz? That he defends the Constitution? That he defends the Second Amendment? That he thinks our soldiers should be able to, protect and defend themselves on military bases? That they should reform the NSA and stop the spying, the blanket spying on Americans? What? That we should repeal Obamacare? Every word, every comma, every sentence? That we should repeal Common Core, every word, every comma, every sentence? That we should what? Secure the border and not give amnesty to 11 to 20 million illegals, as John McCain does? As he believes that we should have mass amnesty? That makes him now a wacko bird. Tell me that he thinks you should balance the budget and not impose an $18 trillion debt upon our children and grandchildren that you, McManiac, along with your other rhino Republicans in bed with liberal Democrats, have racked up on this country. No, you can't stand Ted Cruz. Let's be honest, McManiac. Because he opposes your power. He opposes your privileges. He opposes your control. He opposes the entire criminal system, the sort of mafia state that you and the Democrats have erected for the past several decades. He poses a mortal threat to the ruling class, to you. And so all you have left are nothing more than cheap shots, insults, and little slanders. It's not going to work. You're yesterday, he's today. 617-266-6868. I'll have one of your staff members send you a memo because you're going to forget this by the time I've said it. John, you're up next. Go ahead, John.
Good morning, Mr. Kuhner. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, John?
I'm very well, thank you. First of all, I support Senator Cruz's initiative for military personnel being able to carry a concealed weapon on base. I mean, it's a controlled environment. There are a lot of rules on base that don't apply outside of the gate, regardless of what state it's in, and I don't know why this would be such a difficult issue. But I think, and I don't think you intended it this way, but I think the word cowardice and John McCain cannot be used in the same sentence. John McCain refused to be released from a POW camp in Vietnam because it was arranged with the United States government and the North Vietnamese communists because his father was an admiral, but they wouldn't let everyone go with him.
Honestly, I know his history. His supporters keep throwing that in everybody's face repeatedly.
I like how John McCain can get away with whatever he wants to get away with because something happened in Vietnam 40 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, how long are you going to use that? You know, it's been 45 years. John McCain sold out a long time ago.
Jeff, you can't talk about John McCain like that.
I'm sorry.
Jeff, in Vietnam.
Jeff, let it go, Jeff.
Notice John will never use the same type of thing when he's talking about, say, John Kerry, who was in Vietnam. or any other Democrat who served in a war.
Yeah, but let's be honest, though. I mean, Kerry was there almost as a tourist. I mean, to give McCain his
true.
I mean, he was in the Hanoi Hilton. I mean, there's no question
but this notion that you can't criticize John McCain because he served in the armed forces is ridiculous.
I'm with you, buddy.
That's Ted Cruz calling me now.
That's probably Ted Cruz saying, get me on the air. 617-266-6868. Susan, you're up next. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Great town hall on Saturday. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
Listen, I have to say, I was up in Litchfield on Sunday, and it was fantastic. On Monday, Tuesday, I don't know, I was reading an article about Hillary at some event up in New Hampshire. She ducked all the people that were there to see her and ran in the building and talked to like 4 people. And, I went up there on Sunday, and it's a completely different story with this guy. I mean, he speaks, he takes questions. After the event, he engaged with any person that wanted to ask him a question or talk to him. He listened to them. He answered the question that they asked. I mean, there's just no comparison with these people. I mean, John McCain going after his own like that, it's sickening. It sickens me.
Well, see, Susan, look, Susan, this is the point I want to keep trying to emphasize to everybody. The Republican Party is not one party. It's 2 parties. And the rhinos, the establishment Republicans, prefer to ally themselves with the Democrats than with the conservatives. And so, and so for them, as long as a conservative doesn't get into power, it doesn't matter. So Ted Cruz is a threat to John McCain. He's a threat to McCain's power. Look, just stand back objectively. McCain is pro-NSA. McCain is pro-amnesty. McCain, check this out, okay? And I knew about this, but Ted Cruz had the guts to reveal it. He mentioned it at that speech in Litchfield. After the shooting at Sandy Hook, everybody said, we have to have gun control, massive gun control, massive gun control. So the Republicans, Senate Republicans, had a lunch. Everybody in the room was panicking. Everybody said, it's inevitable now. How much should we give up? How much should we regulate? How much gun control should we have? And as Ted Cruz pointed out, he goes, honestly, if you were in that room, you'd throw yourself out the window. You wouldn't believe how these Republicans were willing to surrender and cave just because the government media complex was going berserk saying, we need gun control. It's guns. Guns are the problem. Ban guns. Control guns. Get rid of the Glock. Get rid of the AR-15. Go away. Just regulate. Gun control, gun control, gun control. Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Mike Lee. They were the only 3 that stood in that entire Senate Republican lunch conference and said, no way. Niet, niet, niet. And because of them filibustering, a week went by, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, and we, the American people, were able to mobilize and defeat the efforts of the regime, along with the rhinos, to impose massive draconian gun control. McCain is pro-gun control, whether he wants to admit it or not. He's pro-amnesty. He's pro-big business. He's pro-Chamber of Commerce. He's part of the ruling class. And so Cruz challenges that, and that's why Cruz must be defeated. 617-266-6868.